organization that was 128 years old, the old Chamber of Mines. We took a particular view that the organization had a significant positive history, but also a challenging history. And it was about time to look at whether that was the brand that was going to be able that we would be able to take into the future. So we got an expert brand consultancy with the brand guru Jeremy Sampson to come and do some work for us to look at what people thought about the brand of both the Chamber of Mines at the time and of the industry as a whole. And quite a mixed bag in terms of responses that came back. But as you know, a brand is a promise made and a promise kept. And so we thought, let's take the good of the past, let's acknowledge the challenges of the past, but reposition the old Chamber of Mines into the new Minerals Council as an organization which recognized those but reflected the promise of the future and how we could work together with other stakeholders to drive a positive reform agenda which would enable South Africa to realize its true economic and transformational potential. And so the rebrand took place last year, 23rd of May 2018. The then Chamber of Mines was renamed the Minerals Council South Africa. And I think it reflects our changing ethos, our changing role, and a very strong focus on our values and how we drive the positive image of the industry going forward, deal with the legacy issues that we need to deal with, but really help get this industry back on track to hashtag make mining matter. So the Minerals Council is very clear on what we need to do to improve the competitiveness of the mining sector. Now just remember, competitiveness is what helps drive investment, it's what helped drive transformation, it is what helps drive distribution of benefits to the state, etc., etc. And so a critical aspect of competitiveness is to say, what do we do to really help drive South Africa up the competitiveness rankings, which is our rating in the mines and perceptions of the investor community and the mining sector more broadly. And so we are ranked currently still in the bottom half of the global rankings of the Fraser Institute survey in terms of our investment attractiveness, despite the fact that we are ranked almost in the top quartile for our potential, assuming best practice, if we put a best practice in place. So we have a view that there are 6 key areas we need to focus on. First of all is having a leadership compact where the leaders of all the stakeholders are working together to drive towards a vision that we jointly share of the industry 10, 20, 30 years down the road. A vision of a competitive, growing, transformed, competitive, safe, environmentally friendly, and community developing industry where all citizens of South Africa are support and champion the mining sector. So that's a sort of forward-looking vision. So the first one is the leadership compact. The compact was signed by the leadership teams at the Indaba in February this year. The second one is policy and regulatory certainty, predictability, and competitiveness. You've got to have those 3 things in place. You can have certain policy, but if the policy is uncompetitive, it doesn't really help. And that includes administration systems that are smart tape, not red tape. As the Minerals Council, the idea of having a Minerals Commission, which independently administers mining right applications and prospecting right applications, instead of it being done by the policy makers and the policy setters, the DMR, is something that we've been thinking about and we've made that proposal to government on. The third angle very much relates to making sure that our infrastructure is competitive, available, and obviously has to be very price competitive. And the problem is that we've had most of our infrastructure has been provided to us by state-controlled parastatals. And in our particular perspective, if you look at what's happened to electricity prices, it's not just about the reliability of supply of electricity, it's also what has happened to pricing. We've seen electricity prices rise by over 530% in the last 10 years to large industrial customers, which is just a deal breaker for us. I mean, we now have an industrial electricity price in rand terms, which is higher than the average of our American counterparts or some of our Canadian counterparts, as an example, never mind our Malaysian or Indonesian counterparts who we are much more competing with. So it's not only about reliability of supply, it's about the long-term pricing trajectory. And so Having a 20-year view on what will happen to prices is quite critical for long-term electricity-intensive industries like mining, smelting, refining. And so our view is that we do need to see much greater private sector participation in due course in areas like rail, in areas like ports, in areas like electricity. And I think that's going to be, we'll unlock a huge amount of potential in this economy if we do that. The fourth area to talk about is innovation, is around innovation, productivity, cost competitiveness, and we have a lot of work that's been done there in relation to the Mandela Mining Precinct, where we obviously have engagement with government, co-funding between government and ourselves. We have a hub and spoke model, and we think innovation and R&D are absolutely critical to the future prospects of the industry. So let's see how that unfolds. And then fifthly, final point to make on the broader schematic is we need stable community relations and employment relations. We can't have big disjunctures and instability on the employment relations front. We've got to have realistic outcomes that work for the industry and organized labor, and which help drive the competitiveness of the sector, which enables investment to take place. And at the same time, we need a much greater degree of collaboration in communities, in community development with local government in particular. I mean, local government and ourselves have a crucial role to play in community development, but let's face the facts. Local government have not exactly risen to the challenge. 2017, we saw more than 53 billion rand being returned by municipalities to central government, unspent. If that money had been used in community development, I think we'd have much different community development outcomes. So we think tag teaming with local government, with communities, and much greater shared projects by mining companies will help achieve much greater community development outcomes, which are very much in the interest. So I think if you put all those together, and I've summarized 6 items into 5 agenda areas, what we had talked about a bit earlier. We think that those are areas that will help really drive an agenda to make this industry more competitive. When you're more competitive, when you move down the cost curve and you become more stable, more predictable, more competitive, you attract a lot more investment. When you get the investment, you employ a lot more people. You really drive the economy from a multiplier effect, from an export earnings effect, from a taxation benefit effect, and it ultimately results in South Africa succeeding and enabling its real economic and transformational potential from its mining sector to be realized.